Okay, so today we are going to attempt to do part 3 of our file folder junk journal with the flap. We're going to sew the signatures in. Now the signatures are, once again, a section of papers that you sew into your journal if you choose to sew them in. I have 3 signatures in this file folder junk journal, and each of the signatures looks about like this right now. You're going to do several things. You're going to make sure that your papers are laid out the way you want them. You're going to make sure they're all nicely lined up, and temporarily I just put a little clip on them and set them aside. Now in the spine of your file folder, your cover, there are 3 sections, and I got out this blank one so that I could see if I could make the camera work to show you. You see there? There are 3 individual sections in there. Now even though this one is painted, I can see them. You might not be able to, but I can. And what we're going to do is we're going to sew one signature into each one of those sections. So for starters, we need to mark and punch holes into it. So I once again have my centering ruler, which has a 0 in the middle and works out from there. And I am going to go, let's see if I can show you. I'm going to put my holes right in between 2 lines. Oh shoot. Right in between 2 lines. There's 2 lines, and I'm going to put my holes right in here. First I'm going to mark them. And I'm hoping you can see the marks. What I'm going to do is I'm going to find my center. This is 9 inches from here to here, so 4.5 on each side, and then we'll have the center. I need to bring it a little closer to me, and hopefully not get my head in the way. I'm going to turn the ruler over so that I can see. Okay, and we're going to put a dot right in the center. We're going to go 1.5 inches out this way and 1.5 inches out this way. Then we're going to go another 1.5 inches, which makes it to 3, and another 1.5 inches this way makes it to 3. Now we are only going to mark and punch holes in one space at a time. Otherwise things get confusing and you'll sew your signature into the wrong hole. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my handy dandy little punch tool, and I'm going to punch a hole. Ooh. It doesn't have to be a big hole, just a hole. Watch your fingers on the back side, don't stick yourself. This thing is not pleasant. Each place I marked, I'm punching a hole. A little easier up here because there's 2 layers in there and there's only 1 layer up here. Now, our cover is punched. And we're going to take a group of our papers, and we're actually going to do exactly the same thing. We're going to take a pencil. Now, I got rid of the clip because I find that when you have the clip on, it does not push the papers down into the center the way you need to, and I am pushing the papers into the center with my thumb and my fingers. And I am going to mark it, and once again we're going to have about 4 1/4 on each edge because this is 8 1/2 by 11 tall where this was 9 tall. And I'm going to mark it at the center, 1 1/2 inches on each side, and 3 inches on each side. Then we're going to get hold of our signature, pushing this crease as much as we can towards that crease, and punch a hole. Now you've got a lot of papers in there. You're going to have to push on it. And we're going to do that for every place we marked. Now, there are special boards that you can buy to do this. I don't do enough of it to make that necessary. I just want a nice good hole that's lined up. Okay. I'm sorry if that keeps closing where you can't see it, but I usually sort of get my punch started and then close it and pull on it with both sides of my hand. Okay, and it's always easier if I flip it over. Make sure you hold everything in place when you're moving it around. And like I said, be careful that the punch is sharp. And I just work it through there. Now I should have threaded up my needle ahead of time, and I wasn't thinking. So I'm going to clip this back together for a minute. And I have waxed linen. And they use this a lot for bookbinding. They use it a lot in basketry. This is just, I think it's 4-corded waxed linen. That's one of those things I have. I have some purple, but I can't find it. So now I want enough to sew the full length of this signature twice, plus about that same again, because I'm going to leave some long tails, and the reason for the long tails is that I use the tails from my sewing in my signature to make bookmarks, and I'll show you how that's done in just a minute, or in a few minutes when we get these signatures put in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick my needle through this hole from inside to outside, and see, even though I lined it up, they've gotten out of alignment a little bit, so it's best to have your needle ready. Okay, and I'm going to grab my cover, and make sure you put your signature in right side up. So this is the top of my cover, this is the top of my signature, and I'm going to pull this down until I have, I have a tail, but it's not real long. And then I'm going to put my needle through one of the holes in the cover, and I'm going to go out, and then I'm going to come back through the next hole down. When I do that, I then have to go back into the signature, and I'm going to go all the way through all of the papers to the very center. Now, if you have trouble with that, you can do it one sheet at a time. See, now I've got them all out of alignment. Okay, when that happens, fold your papers back until you can find your needle. Then just put them on the needle one at a time, unless they go on all the way. There we go. And we're going to pull this down and snug it up. Now, if they're a little bit snug, then it's easier to line up the next hole. And we're going to go back out through the signature and through the cover. You sometimes have to move things around just to find your holes. But you see, that one went very nicely. And then we're going to go back in. And this, we may find that it's off again. We have to find the hole. See, when I find my needle, that's where it starts to go wrong, and you just have to work at it until you get them all on there. Now this is called a pamphlet stitch. I'm going to do something a little bit different than normal in a few minutes, and I'll show you what it is, but first we got to get out here. Now, in a normal pamphlet stitch, you've gone out through the cover, you would go back in through the cover here. Instead, I take this and I wrap it around the bottom, and there's a couple of reasons I do that. Partially because I want this up here to be wrapped around, and I don't want to have it wrapped around up here and not down here. Also, these things tend to do that, and I don't like it. So I take my wax linen, and I've got everything snugged pretty tight, and I wrap it around the bottom, going out through the hole I just went out. And you want to be careful not to split your thread. That is what just happened. And when I do that, now don't pull it so tight that you bend your cover. You want it snug, but not bending your cover. And now you see I've got a solid line there, and I'll have a solid line on the outside. So I just came out the bottom hole. I'm going to go in the next one, and I have to get all the way through my signature. Oh, I'm using a tapestry needle. They make really nice bookbinding needles, but I don't have one, so this is a tapestry needle. And then I'm going to go back out this next hole, make sure I get through my cover, try not to split my thread. And back in. Okay, I have to turn the camera off and turn it back on again. That's one of the things I learned the other day, so I'll be right back. Okay. We're just finishing up here with the binding, and we're going to go through our last hole from the inside to the outside. Okay. Now you know you've done it right when you've got a line of thread here and a line of thread on the outside. And I am just going to tie a square knot. This is snug. It's not tight, it's just snug. And I'm going to tie a square knot that ends up right here at the edge. Be careful not to pull your cover too tight. Now the nice thing about wax linen is that it's not easily untied, it's not slippery, and I usually do a second knot. Just for ends. Now, the reason for the extra strings is I turn these into bookmarks. I'll show you on this one. See here? This is my string and this is my bookmark. So, okay, I'm going to do that one more time. I'm not going to talk through it. If you got it, you don't need me to tell you what I'm doing again. But I just am going to find the center of that next gap and mark my little spots for holes. Remembering that I center them. Maybe I'm going to talk through it again so that I can remind you of my measurements. I put a hole in the center, 1.5 inches out, and another 1.5 inches out, which means it's 3 inches. 1.5 and 3. We're going to punch holes in each of those spots. Sometimes you have to move things around. Okay. I have holes in my cover. I'm going to take my next signature. I'm going to make sure that everything is lined up. We're going to mark it again at the center, 1.5 out, another 1.5, which is 3, 1.5 and 3. And poke holes. Now you want to make sure that you try to get it right in the bend of all the pages. There's close to 20, I can't remember, I think by the time I got finished there's 180 pages in here, so that means there's 20 or so sheets, not sure, I can't remember. That of course counts the envelopes, which remember I flipped this over to hold it better. Like I said, the big thing is to remember that when you are flipping things around, when you go to sew your signature in, make sure you sewed it in right. I didn't. Okay. I'm going to stop the camera and take apart what I've done, and I'll come back and show you how to put in the second signature. I just sewed it with the front of the book towards the back, so let me fix that and I'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, so when I realized I had made a mistake, I had to stop the camera and fix it so that I could go on. We had just punched all the holes for the second signature into our cover and punched all the holes in our signature so that we could sew it in. And I'm going to sew this one in, and I'm just going to, oh, and I just thought I use about a little more than 3 times the length of your page for thread, for cord thread. Having to let this go did not help. There we go. Okay. And we're going to find our second row of holes here. And we're going to do exactly the same thing we did on the first one. It's a little more difficult because you've got your first signature in place and you have to kind of pay attention to where it's at. Okay. But you do the same thing. You go in and out through the signature and the cover. And you don't want to let it go too long before you snug it up. Because especially with wax linen does not slide real well. Okay. And once again, you go out through a hole, you go back in through the next one, all the way in through your signature. Now finding the hole in the signature on the second signature is a little more difficult because you gotta sorry if my head's in the way. Look at it. Okay. You have to find where our needle is. Okay. And then if you have to, put them on one at a time until you figure out where your needle went to. There we go. Can you see the needle right there? See, and what's happening is it's sliding in under some of the other pieces. So, go like that. And back it out just enough to get the next piece on. Go. Now, if you've never sewed in a signature before, use a few less pages. Makes it a little easier till you get the hang of it. Oh, I've got that too short, so we're going to have to back this up. And to do that, you have to pull this out. Pages of the signature and out through our cover. Okay. And remember that I went around the end and back into the same hole I just came out of. Like I said, just be careful on the second pass that you don't split your thread. And don't pull this too tight. Okay, find the middle. The next hole, go back in. Okay, so we have to find our needle, find out where it's at. Okay, apparently it has gone clear to the back of all of our papers. There we go. Aha. Once you find the needle, then you can just add one paper to it at a time. Remember, you've got the right holes when you've got a line of straight line of your thread. Y'all do know that this is never this difficult if nobody's watching. Okay, now I got that one a little short too. So what we're going to do is we are going to pull some of this back from this other thread. I'm just going to pull it down here like that. And shift it back. We get both of our threads about the same length, and we're going to tie that square knot that ends up right here at the edge of the cover. Now there's a third signature that needs to be sewn in, so what I'm going to do is shut the camera off and come back and show you after I get that third piece in. There's no reason for you to sit here and watch me do that. It's just a matter of marking the third groove, the third sets of holes, and sewing in this third signature. So I'll be back in just a few minutes. Okay, so while we were off camera, I sewed in the third signature. So I have all three of my signatures sewn in, and now they are all three right side up. So we have the signatures all sewn in. There's only a couple of things left to do. First off, we need to get our closure, and I used an elastic closure, and in making the cover, in the section making the cover, I showed you how to put in some little rivets, not rivets, eyelets. Oh my goodness, that word was really hard to come by. Now I'm just going to use some elastic cord, run through those eyelets, and I just get this at the fabric store. And it's just round black elastic. And as far as length goes, each book is a little different, so I kind of measure it based on the book. I wrap it around here, and remember, we have to tie this, but it's also stretchy, so we want enough to tie, enough to play with. Okay. about right. So I'm going to measure it so we can see how much it measures just for the heck of it. Oh, that's 14. Right about 18 inches. It may be a little long. We'll find that out. What we're going to do is we're going to stick one end through the eyelet in the front and one end through the eyelet in the back. And now we're going to take this piece on the back and shove it underneath all of our little signatures. And to do that, it's just one of those things you gotta work with. But if you take something flat, get a little fold of it, and just kind of shove it under there. You could also use a crochet hook on the other side to get it through there. And I'm just shoving it through. And see, it's going to come out on the other side. Okay? And then, remember we gave ourselves plenty to tie a knot. You want to tie a square knot. Forgot how to tie a square knot. Okay. And you can do a little dab of glue if you want. I'm just going to do some half hitches on each side so that it's tied in real good, and a half hitch is just wrapped around, and here I'll put it over like just sort of a granny knot in many respects, but if you looked up half hitch you would find it. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. And then I'm going to trim them off just a little bit. And what I do is I pull that knot back underneath the signatures, and you also push it. Therefore it won't show. It's hiding behind your signatures, between the cover, spine, and your signatures. And I just pull both pieces out like so. Now I have this, and I can wrap it around and flip it over. And we have our closure. Remember, each book's a little different. Each book's fatter. We don't have any tags or anything in there yet. So now the last thing that we have to do for this section is to make our little bookmarks. Let me show you one. No, I was going to show you one. There we go. It's just simple, simple, simple. On this one, I'm going to use a couple pieces of cardstock, circle punch, and I might decorate it or put some word on it or something down the road, but for right now I'm just going to tie a couple of knots in the very end of it just so it doesn't slip out. And I'm going to put one circle under here. Put on some glue. Let's put the glue on first. And just glue around the edge. I'm going to put that right down the middle, and I'm just going to put this piece right on top of it. Now then, that finishes part 3, sewing in your signatures. Up next will be the tags and all of the little journal pieces that we tuck into our signatures. That will be part 4. I'll try to get that done as soon as I can, and I'm going to go see what I can do about this one. Thanks so much, and if you like my videos, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up. I also understand if you click the little bell, then it will tell you every time I put a new video up. I'll be back after a while to show you the tags and the journal pieces. Thanks!